Am I the asshole for complaining that my wife cries when we have arguments? We don't usually have arguments, but when we do, it gets intense. I don't ever shout at her, my parents always did that shit to me and I would never do it. The thing is, she always cries and says I'm being too harsh. I honestly don't think I am. I feel like crying in a fight is an unhealthy way to make your point. You can't just cry for everything just to get your way. When I told her this, she burst into tears and began saying that I don't care about her emotions. So, am I the asshole? Edit, my reasoning is that whenever she cries, I feel shitty, like I did it to her. I don't know what to do then, I can't keep on making my argument. Our most recent argument was that she made a $500 purchase without consulting me. It was just for another purse.
You are the asshole. Do you think she cries on purpose or because it's fun? I'm a grown-ass woman and let me tell you, my stress reaction is crying. I hate it. I can usually keep it to eyes and shaky voice when talking but not always. I can pretty much assure you your wife doesn't enjoy crying when you argue. Edit. Op has edited the post. In the scenario added it could definitely be manipulative. But does wife cry in every argument? When Op has done something like that does she cry? In that case it could still be a stress reaction like I said above. You are the asshole. Crying is one of the ways your body dumps stress hormones like cortisol. You're fussing at her for a natural bodily function. Do you also fuss over natural things like her period?
Gonna go against the grain and say not the asshole. I was going to say that you were the asshole until I read the edit. Your wife thinks it's okay to spend $500 on a damn purse without so much as asking you, and then tries to cry her way out of it? That's absolute bullshit. And I'm saying this as a 20-year-old woman who cries as a response to stress-like arguments. She is either partially or fully manipulating her stress response, crying, so she can get away with shit, like a child might. As long as you aren't causing her to cry by shouting, backing her into corners, other abusive shit, then she needs to learn how to manage her own emotions. As long as you are approaching a disagreement argument in a fair and respectful way, she has no right to try and manipulate you by crying. Her lack of emotional control isn't your problem.
You are the asshole. She's allowed to cry when she's upset. She says you're being too harsh, and even you say that the arguments get intense. They shouldn't be getting that intense. You say that you avoid yelling at her because your parents did that, but do you think there's a possibility that you are letting that anger come out in other ways that are unhealthy and unfair to her? It's also a little weird that you think the only reason she's crying is because she's trying to make a point, rather than, being sad and expressing that emotion in a healthy way. There's nothing wrong with crying, and if you think there is enough to get angry with her and demanding she stop, then it doesn't make me feel like you have a healthy grasp on your own emotions.
There really isn't enough info to make a fair judgment. All the people calling you asshole are doing it based on their own reaction to stressful situations, i.e. projecting, which doesn't make them wrong but it doesn't necessarily make them right either. Some women, and men for that matter, weaponize tears because they know their significant other feels awful when they cry, so they use it to win arguments by forcing the other person to back down. However, this does not mean this is what is happening in your case. You give no example of what you said or how you said it, so we can't judge how harsh you were, or were not. However, I will say that spending $500 on a purse behind your back when your finances aren't as stable as they could be and you have an agreement to discuss purchases over $100 is an asshole move. But you didn't ask for judgment on that.
You are the asshole. I know for me I cry when I get really angry. It's just a way that some people process emotion. What is it that you argue about? I mean, it could be manipulation depending on the argument, or it could be what I said above. There's a bit of info missing here.
She's emotional and she's crying. When I'm emotional, I cry. There's nothing wrong with that. Have you tried talking to her about why she thinks you're too harsh?
Depends on the situation. If you think crying automatically equals manipulation in any and all circumstances, then there's something wrong with you. However, you know your relationship. This particular instance, buying a stupid expensive purse without running it by you, is a shit move. But are you just using this particular example because it illustrates your point well? Is this sort of nonsense common on your wife's part? Is your wife quick to anger, scream, cry, accuse, that sort of thing? Or is it just crying? It's hard to understand what's going on with only the provided context.
You are the asshole. Do you realize that crying is almost always a reflex action? Only crazy people or actors purposefully cry at someone. If it makes you feel shitty, that's your deal. Either you should feel bad because you've been a dick, or you have misplaced guilt at the sight of negative emotions in others.
Nah, some people, and it's frequently women, I'm a woman, just cry when they have strong emotions. It's not about getting our way. I have vehemently wished I could get really angry without crying. I don't know the physiology behind it. I just know that any strong emotion causes crying. The way I deal with it is, I stop the conversation and come back to it when I'm under better control. My point being, it's not necessarily something she has control over.
You are the asshole. I'm not usually an emotional person, but for whatever reason, anytime I get annoyed with my boyfriend I start crying. It's not intentional or to be manipulative, it just happens. Probably the same for your wife.
You are the asshole. It's an argument, emotions run high during them, and some people cry. This isn't meant to guilt you or agree with them for argument's sake, this is someone just letting out their emotions. If you guys are arguing to this point, maybe you need some space apart before being able to talk about things in a calm and collected way to be able to actually hear and understand the other person's point of view and come to an understanding.
ITT. Lots of gullible Redditors. Not the asshole, and your wife is being highly manipulative. She has to allow you a way to bring up points of disagreement. She can't just close them down by turning on the waterworks whenever things get sticky for her.
You are the asshole for thinking she's doing it on purpose to manipulate you. Do you have anything supporting this theory? I cry when I get in a heated argument completely against my will and I hate it. It undermines my reasoning and makes it impossible to put forth whatever argument I was attempting. If I could stop it, I would. People have emotions and express those emotions in different ways.
Crying always doesn't mean emotional stress release. I had a narcissistic sister who used to cry to get her way. You need to figure out which category your wife falls into. Do you think she is crying to get her way or make you drop the argument? Not the asshole. Is this how she normally is? Gets emotional if she is having an argument with someone else. Then, YTA. Not the asshole. Crying during an argument is manipulative whether she realizes it or not. It's specifically so you feel bad and drop the issue. Yes, it's a legitimate reaction to heightened emotions, but if it only happens when she argues with you, then she absolutely is trying to manipulate the situation. Especially since she spent $500 on a purse when she currently is unemployed. Not the asshole. Her making that purchase was absolutely not okay and it needed to be discussed. Whether she actively manipulating you or just very sensitive is irrelevant. Literally just pretend it's not happening next time. Continue the discussion as if she weren't crying. You two might need counseling. Not the asshole. I used to cry like your wife, and then I started to explore why my knee-jerk reaction was crying. Like it or not, I realized it was manipulative. It brought any constructive conversation to a halt. Your wife can fix this. Couples counseling would be helpful. If you reacted to every conflict with rage, no one would say, "Oh well, men are rageful." As a woman, it's insulting to read, "Women cry, deal with it." It's that exact attitude that keeps women from advancing in so many areas. P.S. I'm sure she doesn't cry at work when things don't go her way. It can be controlled, she chooses not to.
Info. Does she ever return to the conversation once she's in a better state of mind?
Not the asshole. But this sub will tell you that crying is like gravity or something and can't be helped.
I'm no assholes here like the $500 on a purse without any type of consultation. Kinda sucky. I do understand that everybody in the comments is like, you are the asshole. Sick meanie, that's how people react with stress. Yes it is, but it's also how people manipulate, and also the crying coupled with, you're being too harsh, is kinda suspicious, but if I were op I'd talk to her about how she views what you do as harsh. Communication is key in relationships.
Not the asshole man sounds like you're just trying to have a civil discussion about stuff that needs to be discussed. Shit, she spent £500 without telling you on a fucking purse and expects that to not make you at least slightly pissed. Try and have a normal discussion with your S.O. without trying to make them feel bad every time. Cry if you want, but don't use that against them, especially if he's not even raising his voice or anything and you just can't take a slightly confrontational discussion.
You are the asshole. She's not crying to make a point. She's crying because she's emotional. In the example you gave, what exactly did you say to make her cry? Not the asshole. You can't ask her not to cry, but I would definitely say if you can't discuss any hard issues without her crying that you can ignore it. Some people just cry easily and that's okay, but doesn't mean they just get a free pass to do whatever. I think what you need to do is work on toughing it out and not feeling bad if you aren't being mean or unreasonable. Maybe try backing off if she starts to cry and say something along the lines of, "Let's take a pause to calm down, but this is important and we need to discuss this, so come get me when you feel ready to talk." If you stay calm and give her space, it might help her process and prepare better. I really hope it's not a crutch she uses to get out of arguments and trouble, but it doesn't sound like that from just this, so that's good.
It's time to get some counseling on how to better communicate with each other. Who knows if those are crocodile tears? Better to just navigate it with a professional.
Not the asshole. She's an adult and crying during basic arguments is manipulative. And spending $500 on a purse right now is straight up dumb. I can't help it, when I'm stressed I cry. I don't do it to get my way ever. It's not a ploy, and I'm betting your wife is the same way. Not the asshole, yet, but be a little more understanding.
So do you have 100% joint finances? Or does she have her own personal allowance? Did she use her own money to buy something to make her happy? Does she collect unemployment, and does the majority of that contribute to household expenses? I mean, you made her feel shitty about something she cared enough about to spend $500 on, and now every time she looks at it, she's going to remember the fight and feel guilt and shame. So you've effectively killed any enjoyment she might have gotten out of it anyway, which definitely makes you the asshole. And worse, you know you're the asshole. You feel bad, and you blame your wife, so you're belittling her feelings of stress and sadness to make it manipulative, instead of the direct result of your argument.
No assholes here. I can get where you're coming from. It would feel like you're being manipulated, but I doubt she wants to be crying. Info. When you guys disagree, is she ever able to express her opinion without tears? Like, can you guys have a successful dialogue?
Not the asshole. That's emotional manipulation. If she is the crying type, she should leave the argument and collect herself, then reconvene when she is calm. The crying to win an argument shit is so juvenile and gaslight. Why?
People are jumping to way too many conclusions. You need to put way more info in this post. She could actually be acting overly emotional and not be able to communicate effectively, or even worse, she could be being purposely manipulative. But all of that is probably less likely than you being the insensitive one. You didn't provide literally any information to Lieutenant us make an actual judgment.
You are the asshole. Some of us cry when frustrated or emotional. Stop making it about yourself. NTA crying isn't a valid reason for being right.
I think some people here have trouble looking beyond their own emotions, and see that while crying is a completely natural thing to do, it can also be completely destructive to discussion and conversation, especially coupled with an automatic, "you're being too harsh." We can't know whether Op is being too harsh, but as someone who doesn't cry, and with a girlfriend who does, it can feel unfair that you have to console someone when you feel like perhaps you were wronged in what made the argument ensue. Obviously I still console my girlfriend, and it's not anyone's fault unless it's done deliberately, I guess. I think it's just senseless to ignore the fact that it creates a shitty dynamic in arguments just because it's natural. Some people naturally raise their voice or even yell when they have arguments. That doesn't change the fact that it contributes negatively to arguments. Nah.
You are the asshole. Everyone manages their emotions differently. Some people yell, some people cry, some people get really quiet and withdraw. Telling her that she's being manipulative for expressing herself isn't going to make an argument any easier.
Nah. I know what it's like to get emotional, and I suck at regulating my feelings sometimes, but I know when arguments transpire it's important to be logical and reason with each other. The fact that your wife cries every time you two have an argument shows that she's not capable, doesn't want to have a reasonable discussion with you. It doesn't matter if the other party is a man or a woman. I hate it when people cry instead of finding a way to communicate effectively. Have you considered therapy for her or for both of you? Not enough info. Can't possibly judge without knowing how harsh you're actually being. Just because you're not yelling doesn't mean you're not being cruel. Some people are very good at hurting others while sounding completely reasonable. Or you could be being genuinely completely reasonable. No way to tell. Similarly, the purse. Is $500 pocket change to you or is it a month's rent? How much do you control her finances? What financial agreements do you have with each other? Without knowing things like that we can't judge her purchase or your reaction.
Info. Regarding the purse, does she bring in her own income at all? Or is there a large difference in incomes? If she makes decent money and spent her money on a purse, then it is what it is. Unless 1. It's a spending problem and is a reoccurring issue of her dropping ludicrous dollar on purses, other things. 2. It's not her money or she's putting you both at risk financially by spending what she has instead of contributing to the marriage. I'd need more information. Is she genuinely crying from an emotional response? Is she okay 5 to 10 afterwards? Does she cry every time, even over small things? The edit with the $500 makes me believe she may be crying to get out of the argument. A good friend of mine's ex-wife would turn on the waterworks as soon as she could to avoid the multiple issues their marriage had. 80/20ths would be her fault, and he would fall for it every time. It wasn't until a mutual friend, not me, recorded her admitting her tactics, one of many, that our friend actually got to set her straight and find out what she was really like. Not good, by the way.
Not the asshole, she just trying the easy way for escape, huge red flag. Not the asshole, she cries so you feel shitty and drop the argument.
Not nearly enough info. What do you fight about?
I was going to say not the asshole, because I have had basically the same arguments with my mother. But reading all of the comments, I should not be mad at my mom for normal bodily reactions to stressful situations. You are the asshole. Whenever she cries, I feel shitty, like I did it to her. She's crying because she feels shitty, dude. Other people have feelings. You don't seem to care about her emotions at all. You think she's being manipulative with literally no justification.
Not the asshole, crying to win an argument is toxic. I'm guessing, if you were raised in such an environment, maybe you are aggressive without realizing it.
You are the asshole. I doubt she's doing it on purpose. This is actually why I try to avoid fights. I get frustrated and start crying no matter how hard I fight it. I hate it because it is stupid, but I can't control it and your wife probably can't either. Edit. Oops, I completely skipped over the edit. If she started crying after you got upset for her buying a $500 purse without asking, then yes, it could be manipulative. I change my answer to not the asshole.
Nah. Just miscommunication and not a common ground of understanding. I understand how it looks manipulative and sometimes weird if you're having an argument and they burst out in tears. But as someone said in the comments, and to my experience, avid crier when out under stress, it's sometimes out of your control whether or not you cry. If you guys talk about it and determine she's not doing it to make you feel bad, then just carry on, my friend.
You both need to go to couples therapy.